Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday. It's a beautiful day here in Colorado. Hopefully, those in Colorado are enjoying the day. It's warm and blue sky. It's going to be a warm week. Some really record high temperatures later this week. And if you're joining us from other places, hope you have a beautiful day as well. I'm Craig Dippenberg, your host of Parenting During the Pandemic. This is now, I think, we're starting our sixth week. We're up to over 6,000 views. So that feels really good as we venture into this new phase that I'm going to be talking about today. And I have a specific title for this new phase as we're starting to get a little more freedoms again and looking at branching out. I'm also practicing a new view on the computer today. My wife watched some video about how you're supposed to elevate your laptop and have appropriate distance to look the best. So I put a little step stool here on my desk and elevated it up. I'll just have to remember to keep looking up. So Sydney's going to help me with that. So I apologize if you don't see me fully, but I'm going to try my best. I want to start with a couple things just from the past week or in the news. If you happen to see or go online, the Wall Street Journal yesterday had, it was Spain's, or was it 2 days ago? What is today? Oh, it was yesterday. Yesterday's Wall Street Journal. You lose track of the days. It's amazing. Had a picture from Spain. Now, the children in Spain have not only been shuttered at home, but they literally couldn't go outside. So all the kids have been inside for 4, 5, 6 weeks. And yesterday was the first day the children could go outside. And the journal had a picture of these two sisters. They were sisters, like maybe 12 and 8, and they are running down the sidewalk. And while they were wearing masks, you couldn't see their smiles, but you knew they had some amazingly huge smiles underneath those masks. They just looked as free and as happy as could be as they sprinted down the street. It was really a lovely picture. Another thing, it was reinforced for me yesterday, but it actually started 6 weeks ago. At our office, we specialize in children's social, emotional, and behavioral groups to help children develop in those three areas. And thank you to Sydney getting us online with all this. She was reading the future for us. We started doing some of these Zoom group sessions 6 weeks ago. Now, I started the groups in 1981, and they've always been in person, and that's what we do. It's very hands-on. So the thought of a Zoom group, I was really quite skeptical, but the very first time my wife did it out at our house, and she had her headphones on, I immediately knew they were going to work because of the sound of her voice. And my wife, Elisa Patterson, who's in the business name, she when she talks with kids, she takes on this very lyrical personality. Her voice completely changes, and she's enthusiastic and engaging and energetic. And I got to hear that again yesterday with her a younger age group, where they've now gone from doing about 30 minutes, they're up to an hour, shooting towards 90 minutes eventually. But you can just tell the kids having fun. They're doing all sorts of online workouts with different superhero characters. They're playing some games and sharing. Yesterday's topic was disappointments, and the kids talking about various disappointments they've had. And just listening to her talk, not knowing anything the children are saying, I could tell that she's really nailed it, along with our other therapist. I also started doing Zoom classes for St. Anne's Episcopal School here in Denver, getting back to my curriculum. I was a little uncertain about doing that, but I found it, one, it was a great deal of fun. It was so important for me to see the kids' faces again. So not seeing these kids for the last 5 weeks on campus, in person, really been tough. I've been there 24 years, and springtime is just the best there. And seeing the kids run around and laugh, and it was so fun to see them on the Zoom classrooms, laughing and having fun, and able to start teaching again. And this last week and this week has just been about sort of this whole process. And then in future weeks, I'll be getting back to my brain-based curriculum. But it also was funny because no matter what, whether you're in person or online, kids are still kids. So in addition to kids, who are paying attention and raising their hand and following the rules, we of course had some children who were getting out of their seats, throwing paper balls at their brother across the kitchen. And then I have the rule about we Zoom, we raise our hand to talk. I don't allow any chatting amongst them. You can only chat with me. I thought I had everything covered, but one of the kids discovered you can change your name on your screen view to all sorts of things. And he was rapidly changed his name. And then one of the girls thought it'd be fun to have a avocado as her emoji for her name. And then one of the boys decided a poop emoji would be the best. And not only did I have one poop emoji, but I think there were like 10 poop emojis, and all the other children thought that was hysterical. And there's the old trick of changing your background, which gives me a headache when they do that. So I've added that to my list of rules. But it's good to know that kids are still up to shenanigans, even though we've all been quarantined and trying to be on our best behavior. Then one last piece, not on the topic for today. I may do this in the future, a whole segment on it, but I was on the Tom Martino Troubleshooter radio program yesterday, talking about this new phase that I'm going to share with you. And one of the questions that was asked was, electronics. And the high school, the teenagers, this came from the dad of a teenager, and said, my son's just binging on gaming nonstop. And I know there's plenty of teens binging on social media. He said, what do we do? And what I answered was, you have to think of this as sort of that teeter-totter where we really have just let the kids binge on this stuff because we needed to. They don't have contact with their friends, and they need to be in contact with their friends. And you need to get work done. I need to get work done. And so it just sort of became a free-for-all. One thing that's changed now that most of the schools are doing the online schooling, that has added some structure to the morning routines where the kids are supposed to be online, taking their classes, having office hours with their teachers, and getting their homework done. So that's been a good step. And that by itself has reduced some of the unlimited gaming and social media. I think the next step is as the freedoms expand. So here we've gone from just totally binging. The school is kind of changed that a little bit. And now we're looking for increased freedom that perhaps our students and our children and teens can start having some sort of in real life, IRL contact with friends. So I would try to go back to, you're going to be going to your summertime limits. Whatever you did last summer, I'd be shooting to kind of taper it down as we're doing more school and as social contact increases. I think that's a natural time to start getting back to last summer's rules. So whatever you did in the summer, and it looks like we're in summer now pretty much until schools are out, I would try to push back to those limits. So you're just trying to adjust slowly, kind of titrate it down based on how much kids are getting to do with friends and actually have contact, and also getting the schoolwork done. Now, phase 3, I've decided phase 2 is the waiting place. Phase 1 was pretty much shock and awe, to be honest, and we did the 12 tips on how to just get yourself structured. Phase 2 is the waiting place. Phase 3, I'm calling out of hiding. And the phrase comes from that old tag game, hide and seek, that you played as kids have been playing for thousands of years. That's a natural, instinctual game for kids to play. It serves an important survival purpose. But I want you to think back to when you were a kid in the neighborhood, perhaps, or at the school ground, and you're playing hide and seek. Now, in this case, the seeker is the coronavirus, and the rest of us have been in hiding. And we've been listening to the countdowns to the governors around the country talking about numbers, and numbers are going down. And it's almost like, okay, the coronavirus has counted to 10, and now it's coming out to look for us, and has been. Now, if you remember back to when you were a kid, there was always like 1 or 2 kids in your group who lacked the requisite impulse control and would immediately dash out pretty much as soon as the taggers started to seek. And they were always the first ones caught pretty much every time. The rest of us with better impulse control would wait, and we would stay in shelter and behind a bush, behind a tree, and you would look out, you would peek out to see where the tagger was, and you'd quickly pull your head back in so they didn't see you. Maybe when they passed by, you'd start to to creep out, but then you had to make sure they didn't turn around and look just in case, and you might pop back into the bush again, or you might make it for another bush and try to get to a bush that's a little closer to home before you finally arrived at home safely. And that's sort of this process of phase 3. We're all watching the virus, seeing what's happening, and trying to be safe as we slowly creep out, and may have to, we're going to talk about the accordion in a minute, we may have to go back in, but we're looking to be our safest, and our kids are going to need help with that. Now, my first suggestion on this, and it struck me Thursday, I was talking to a teenager, and I said, now, originally in Colorado, we were supposed to open up yesterday, for the whole state. It was determined by the mayors and counties around Denver that we would wait till May 7th. So that was an initial disappointment. Some parts of Colorado are now starting to open up. But I asked this young man, I said, what are you hoping for? What do you want to do when we start to have some more freedom? And he said, well, first thing I want to do is see my girlfriend. I haven't seen her in 6 weeks. Can't wait to see her. Then I want to have my buddies over to the house. And then I want to have a sleepover. And then I want us to do our June annual family June trip out to the Jersey Shore. And then I'm going to go to camp. And I looked at him and I said, whoa, buddy, we're going to have to slow this down. I think he has high hopes. I said, you've got high hopes for when this is over. And right now you have to have small hopes. You're just looking for the smallest things, because there's a chance that summer camp's probably not going to happen. And who knows about travel and going out to the shore and all these things he's done year after year in his life. We're just going to have to wait and see. And it's best to just kind of slow it down and have a small hope mindset is the thing you want to talk to your kids about. What's something kind of small they could do that they're looking for? I did just read yesterday, one of the medical experts for the government came out and said the social distancing will probably last into August. So they are going to have to be pretty small hopes, small hopes. Now, within that, then you're taking your child's small hopes, and I want you to imagine a staircase. And what I did for this young man is I wrote down the different things he's hoping to do on different steps, with the last one being the family trip or the camp. And so with your younger children or your teens too, you want to talk about, okay, what are some things you want to do? And let's design a staircase for when you'll get to do those things, depending on how things are going with the virus. So if they're calling it, instead of shelter safe at home or something is the new term from the governor here. If that works, we'll be able to maybe have a little play date with a parent and another child. Or you might be able to go to the park with a couple friends. And then if that goes well, then we might get to do the next thing. Maybe it's the ice cream shop that you go to, or you hang out at the Starbucks with a very small group and outside with the requisite distance. But you really want to have that, and then talk about this is going to be a flexible staircase. So we are going to move up, but we may have to move down. Or we got to step 1 and we were hoping to get to step 2 in the next week. Well, it might be 3 weeks before we could do that. We just don't know. And one of the things here at our office with our group sizes, groups are typically 12 to 13 children. We've planned starting this summer, we're going to trim them down to 5 or 6. So that in the event we can meet with the children in person, we can have that requisite social distance and help them be safe and healthy while they're getting to see each other in person. And at some point, we might be able to merge 2 groups together and get back to our old numbers, but we don't know. So maximum flexibility in your design. Now, that flexibility then brings up the issue of disappointments. That let's say you've got a younger child and you set up for you and another parent of another child, same age as say 3rd graders, and you were going to set up a play date together at the park, and you planned out the correct distancing, but then we have to go back to shelter in space. That obviously is going to be disappointing for your child. Many of the kids I talked to last week are already talking about their disappointments about camps. Maybe there won't be camp. Now, that's a key thing for kids. What I thought about this morning, I got an email from the University of Colorado. I've been a season ticket holder for 35 years for the football program. And we got an email saying they're not sure we're going to have a season and they're deciding on options. And for me, the thought of going into fall without college football would be a huge disappointment. It is absolutely my favorite time of year, but that's something I'll have to adjust to. So it's easy. Another analogy with kids, you can talk about this is going to be like an accordion. So we may start to get closer to your friends and other extended family members. We might be a little closer, but the accordion may have to go back out. And then hopefully we can get a little closer, do more, but then we have to go back out. And none of us know for sure how long those different phases of the accordion will last. But it's really understanding that it's kind of be an in and out process. So if you have that staircase, you can talk about where you are, where you want to be. For kids, if you have a child or a teen, because they're pretty much, if you have a child with impulse control problems, or teenagers, because when we talked with a teen brain last week, we talked about how their impulse control center, their president, drops in half. So they all struggle with impulse control problems. But you really want to make sure if you have a younger child with impulse control problems, you're going to want to do supervised play dates. Just sending your child out to be with another kid and say, hey, don't forget to stand 6 feet apart. It's probably not going to work. Now, some of you have kids where you can say, hey, honey, you can have that play date with the neighbor next door. Don't forget to wear your mask, keep your mask on, and stand 6 feet apart. And that child will do it. Some of you have kids that will follow those rules perfectly. Excuse me. Other kids aren't going to be able to do that. So you're going to have to plan with the other parent to really structure it, set it up, and supervise it. So kids are going to, you could set up a game of Frisbee where everybody's standing the appropriate distance. I've talked to several teens who have continued to play lacrosse with their buddies. They meet at a field and they're all 20, 30 feet apart and they're throwing the lacrosse ball back and forth. It could be a little soccer back and forth with the appropriate distance. So if you have the child who is more impulsive, you will need to be on top of that and really learning to supervise that. For teenagers, I'd highly recommend you have this discussion with them, or if you got the college kids at home, and have a contract. Set up a contract with your teen. So you're going to have curfew times, just like you did. You had curfew times when you were a kid. Set up what the curfew time is going to be. What are the allowed interactions with their friends? If you are able to, have a couple kids over your house where you can monitor some of that would be great. But really talking to them about that social distancing, staying apart, and having a contract about what they're going to be allowed to do. Now, I've had overall 80% of the kids I've seen are doing really well with this. One of the college kids I saw, he told me how he hooked up with somebody to share some tobacco products, and I'm like, my God, you weren't sharing a vape pen, were you? He's like, no, we each had our own. I'm like, oh, that's good. That's good. I never thought in my life that I would be encouraging the young adults with the idea of vaping, but I was just happy they had their own vape pens and weren't sharing one. That would be the worst. So you do want to talk to them about being safe and whatever it is. And if your teen is experimenting with alcohol, like the last thing you want them to do is to share a beer with somebody or drink out of a bottle with somebody. So you are going to have some very common sense talk with your teens about what's safe and what's not safe. And let's try to stay within those parameters. Finally, I think the teens and romance, and then I have one last point, but we got like this young kid I see, he's got his girlfriend. This is a good time to talk to your teens about how to be romantic. And romance isn't just jumping there in each other's arms constantly, but it's doing things like this young man, him and his girlfriend, they have Zoom workout sessions together. So they set up their Zoom and they both have some weights and stuff at home, and they've been working out together via Zoom. Also a good time to talk about the art and beauty of writing letters. There's nothing more romantic in this world than a well-written love letter. And this would be a good time to do that, to practice those romantic skills. I talked last time about the European couple, the Danish woman and the German man in their 80s, who meet every day at the border, and they sit across from a table from each other so they're appropriately apart, and they share coffee and just talk for a couple hours. That's romance. That's the things you want to encourage for your teens as they have to stay away. Now, on the last section, this totally relates to that, is the importance of touch. So the human's brain development, so much of it is based on touch with others. Kids are drawn to touch. You held your child when they were a baby, and you touched them for hours and hours and hours on end. And as they grew, you developed special butterfly kisses and special hugs and all sorts of touching. And kids need touch. Back during World War II, at the end of the war, they had many orphaned babies who were in hospital wards, and they were failing to thrive. They had food, they were wrapped in blankets, they were in a healthy environment, but they just weren't living. And they did discover that there was this one nurse, sort of midwife, elderly woman, I think her name was Anna, if I'm not mistaken, who had an amazing rate of success with the children in her care. And what they found that she was doing is she would cuddle them and walk with them. I mean, she'd spend hours walking with these little infants. It was the touch that made the difference, that kept these children alive. On a neurochemical level, when we are touching each other, our cortisol levels, the stress hormone levels, go down for humans, and your oxytocin levels go up. And oxytocin is this wonderful hormone that helps you feel bonded to other humans. And that's within your family or with your friends. And so touch is one of the most natural instincts you'll find for humans and all animals. So if you ever get to go back to the zoo, I always enjoy seeing tiger cubs or any kind of baby animal, and they just wrestle around. When we got our puppy, we picked out our puppy out of a litter, and those little puppies are just all over each other. And that's what younger children want to do too. So they're used to tag. They like, the boys are always wrestling. I can't tell you how many times in a class when children are sitting on the carpet that a couple of girls will start doing each other's hair, touching each other's hair, hugs. I had an 8th grade girl a couple of weeks ago. She said, I really miss hugging my friends because I'm a huggy person. And those hugs are out right now. If you've had a middle school or high school boy, you know that they've invented all sorts of games. One was called 5-Star, where you're slapping your hand on somebody's back to leave a star mark, or you're doing knuckle punches, or there's the one with the circle, and if the person looks at your finger in a circle below your knee, you get a free punch. All these ways that boys and girls and young teen males and females touch each other, which we aren't going to be allowed to do. That's going to be some time before that happens. Adults are talking about handshakes. Maybe handshakes are a thing of the past, and we have to do the namaste bow. And I hope not. Handshakes are a wonderful tradition in our culture as a way to greet people and show that you're friendly. So right now, I would encourage all of you parents at home to touch your kids as much as possible and in appropriate ways that, if you got older ones, that they're comfortable with. So your younger kids, it's those snuggle parties, in bed or rolling around on the sofa. My dad always used to do tickle party, and we would laugh. Airplane, he'd put us up on his feet and we'd pretend we're airplanes. Lots of wrestling. Thumb wrestling is a good one. But do lots of touch at home, doing the hair. My daughter spent 2 hours coloring my wife's hair and just touching her. It was just marvelous to watch the two of them together. So at home, I'd really encourage a lot of touch. Your kids need it. Your teens still need it. The trick is going to be, as this expands, as the accordion starts to move out and we get to peek out behind the bush, is to really talk to your teens and your children about we can't be wrestling like we used to. We can't be doing all that touching. We'll figure out different things we can do over time, and hopefully we'll be able to do those natural, fun things in the future. But that is going to be the toughest one. In closing, I'm going to share on Thursday, we're hoping to have one of my associates, Caleb, on, who's going to talk about assistive technology for kids. He specializes in kids with learning struggles and knows lots about different assistive technologies to help students who have learning struggles. So we're hoping to have him on Thursday. And then I pulled out a couple pieces. One was in Time magazine. It was a quote from, I think it's Tom Steyer, former Democratic presidential candidate and philanthropist. And Time interviewed their top 100 people of the year and asked them what their thoughts are through this. And he pulled up the words from the famous UCLA basketball coach, John Wooden. And John Wooden wrote a book, the name of it, which I'm blanking on. If you got a team, it is a classic book, written by the famous coach, all-time leading coach for UCLA. But one of his words of recommendation is focus on what you can control and do it to the best of your ability. So John Wooden's philosophy was not studying films of the other team and spending all this time setting up for the other team. You can't control the other team. He focused with his players on what they could do and being the best they could be at it. Now, for those of you with teenagers and preschoolers, just try your best. 51% consistency is just fine because that's a different world. But you really have to think about what can I control and what do I have to let go of. And after reading that, I pulled off my wall. I have a whole collection of poems in my office. I pulled down the Serenity Prayer written by Reinhold Niebuhr. And then it was later used by AA. The founders of AA loved the Serenity Prayer, and that is one of their standards they use. It was also cross-stitched into a frame when I was a boy, and it was right above our TV set. So anytime we turned on the TV to watch Leave It to Beaver or something, we had the Serenity Prayer right above us. So it literally was ingrained into my memory. But the first part, I'll read the first half. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, and accepting hardship as a pathway to peace. I think that sums it up, and I don't know if Niebuhr ever went through a pandemic. He may have gone through the one in the late mid-1918. I'm not sure about that, but this certainly captures a lot of things. The idea of mindfulness and accepting hard things in life, the philosophy of suffering, and more important, thinking about what can you control, what's out of your control, and the wisdom to know the difference. So during this next phase, as the accordion moves back and forth, and we're all trying to make it home to home base safely without getting tagged, I wish you the best in having that wisdom and being able to let go of some things and focus on the things you can control, and being single-minded, and just living one day at a time, which is something we're all doing, and helping your kids through the excitement of this new phase, but also the restrictions and the disappointments. So temper their hopes, make them small hopes, create a staircase, and I wish you all the best. Thank you for coming in today.